Well, good morning and welcome everybody to our first webinar in a whole row of webinars which will be coming up in next time. My name is Christoph Mertens. I work for the IDSA since mid-2018 and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. Let me say why we are here. Actually, we are at the headquarters of IDSA. We are thrilled about the idea of IDS. And in order to share some of this excitement with you, we came up with the idea of this webinar sequel in order to explain you in depth what the IDS is about. And we will deal with the different layers of the reference architecture model. We will talk about data governance with you. We want to share ideas about trust in the context of IDS with you. And yet there's more to come. To stay tuned, what topics will be part of our webinars, you can go to our website or follow us on Twitter so you will not lose any information on this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might ask yourself how to contact us. You will find all the information you need in the info box down below. And yeah, you can come back to us with all the questions that you have and write us an email or contact us via Twitter or how you ever prefer to contact us. And we will get back to you on your questions. Yeah, follow us on YouTube so you won't miss another video. And if you like what you see, just hit the like button. For those of you who are part of the live webinar right now, after the presentation we will have now, there will be a discussion where we ask you to ask questions to us. Whatever comes to your mind, we will be glad to answer all this. And yeah, I would say welcome for the first webinar. Lars Nagel, our Managing Director, will give you some more information on the context of the IDS and what IDS is all about on a general level, so you have a nice start to this webinar sequel. And yeah, without further ado, I would say welcome, Lars, and yeah, we're excited to hear from you what the IDS is about.
Thank you, Christoph, for that kind introduction. Hello, everybody on the phone, on the web, and I'm as curious as and as excited as Christoph already stated on IDS and what is going on concerning international data spaces. Christoph already introduced me. I'm the Managing Director of the International Data Spaces Association. The International Data Spaces Association is the not-for-profit organization that drives the idea of international data spaces. And you may have noticed that we have changed our name at the beginning of the year. Formerly, we have been known as Industrial Data Space Association, but referring to our ongoing globalization activities, we have changed our name to International Data Spaces Association. Okay. I'm very happy to start our webinar sequel, and I want to give you a broad overview over what's going on concerning international data spaces, or IDS, as I will call it later on to make it easier. I will try to sketch all dimensions of international data spaces from the technical perspective, the strategical perspective, and a look to the future at the end. That brings me to the agenda of today's webinar. I will hold the webinar following 5 chapters. First of all, I would like to give an introduction. What is our approach? What is our role in the data economy? The second chapter will be on the context of IDS. So who are we talking with? Who are partners? What are we doing beyond the technological development and so on? Then in the third chapter, I will have a focus on the principles of IDS. What are we doing from a technical perspective? And then in the fourth chapter, I will move to very concrete things. I will present our implementations and the way we want to bring our offering to the market. And at the end, I would like to give a short perspective to the future, the way forward. What are we really actually doing? What is going on? Where can you get engaged? And what is something to be excited about in the very near future? Okay. Well, I start with the IDS approach. And what we're talking about is data sovereignty. And that's the expression that we are presenting for nearly 3 years now, and something that is very important for companies and for individuals in today's data-driven economy. And what we want to provide is a mechanism and a trustworthy ecosystem so that you can decide what happens with your data. Talking about data, we have to bring in our minds that data is becoming more and more an economic asset, and it is the key for that what we call the data economy. The data economy works only because we are able to link data, to connect data, and to make more out of it. For example, setting up new business models. And when we're talking about data as an economic asset, then it can be just the one data set that has an incredible large value. For example, a technical drawing for a plane, or the gathering of data creates the value in itself. For example, if you are gathering mobility data or customer data, or if you have a look at the right side of the picture, the data set itself has no value at all, like the temperature of 24 degrees Celsius, but you have to know the context and the stream of data. So if we're talking about sensor data, the value is in the stream of data that you can analyze and use for. So there are, from the very beginning, different approaches how to deal with data and different kinds of data, and we have to take that into consideration. Well, accepting that data has a large and more larger value, we see that trading with data creates huge revenues for some focal companies in an ecosystem, and they are very well-known companies, and they earn a lot of money. Right now, it tends to the fact that these companies have something like a monopoly. The genuine creator of data doesn't necessarily benefit from the value that someone else derives from selling or trading his data, and it isn't like that in an adequate way. That means that a lot of companies do not take the advantage of the value of their own data. So if we really want to make the data economy a success, there has to be a new mechanism how to deal with data, and that's what we call data sovereignty. So we need something like a vendor-independent data marketplace, or a lot of them existing parallel. We need to connect all these vendor-specific platforms in the IoT, but also beyond. We need to create spaces where there are there's data available and open to all participants of this data ecosystem. And the data shall be provided at low transaction costs, and it must be very easy to adopt and easy to use the data or this data ecosystem. And that is something that we really need if we want to gain the low-hanging fruits of the data economy. And providing a solution for that is exactly what we're doing with the International Data Spaces Association. We provide at a foundation of everything our reference architecture. And this will be, or can be, the base for an open and extremely important, a distributed data marketplace, where the data is not stored in a central data lake or anything like that, but the data stays in a peer-to-peer network approach with a data provider. Then we can ensure data sovereignty for the creator of data, so he can decide what happens with his data. He can control the data flows and determine the usage restrictions or usage constraints concerning his data. Furthermore, we can make a proof that of the data provenance for the user of data. So if you are acting in a business ecosystem and there's a value chain of data, then you can keep track of who's using your data, and perhaps you can participate in the value creation at the end. That can be made audit-proof if requested, and all that is based on European values on data. You may know the FAIR principles, for example. So to put it in a nutshell, or to make it more concrete, what does the IDSA really define or deliver? We deliver a reference architecture for this mechanism for the data economy. We deliver concrete specified interfaces. We will provide a contractual framework if you want to set up business connections with the business partners in your ecosystem. And to make it really happen, we provide sample code so that you can start playing and implementing. And all that for creating an open data ecosystem. So if a company or a whole business ecosystem uses this approach and adopts the IDS reference architecture, companies are able to link data without regret. What we are addressing is the gap or between, on the one hand side, the insight that you have to share data in order to be part of the sharing or the platform economy, setting up completely new business models based on data and linking data. But the problem is that you know that your data has a certain value and you want to stay the owner of your data, or at least you want to know what happens with your data, so you want to control the flow of your data. And we want to bring up a solution for that, and that's what we call digital or data sovereignty, and how we do it, I will start to explain in this webinar, and the rather technical details will be explained in the following episodes of this webinar from my colleagues. To put it in a nutshell, the vision that we have as the International Data Spaces Association is we want and we will set up a global de facto market standard for the sovereign use of data. That's in a nutshell what I've been explaining the last minutes. And if you have the time, you will read our vision statement at the right side of this picture. So, who is driving all of this, and who are partners, and who are those who bring IDS to life? Right now, we have more than 90 members in our association from more than 17 countries. Most of them are large global players, and they are acting in their business globally, so it doesn't depend on from which country they are. As you may notice, there are companies from all domains, from all industries, from the banking and insurance sector, from the automotive industry, from the electronics industry, the IoT technology providers, telecommunication, and from the medical industry. On the other hand side, we have a large part of research institutions which drive the technological core of our developments, and they are joined by a lot of very innovative companies which have a high expertise in the IT, in the security, in the network domain, and everything that is connected to the topic and issue of data economy. So now I would like to dive a little bit deeper into our approach. The core of the reference architecture and what we are designing is the IDS connector. I come to that in detail later, but that is something like a secure internet gateway that can be used to connect a device, a platform, or something else with the international data space partners, with everyone who is following the same idea and who's certified according to our certification scheme and using an IDS connector. So the IDS connector is the entrance, the ticket to join a secure part of the internet for the economy, for companies, exchanging, sharing, or linking data in a completely new manner with the possibility of having usage constraints attached to their data, and with a very, very high level of trust. And when we're talking about connecting data and data endpoints, then we're talking about all imaginable data endpoints. We're talking about the field devices like an actor or a sensor. We're talking about platforms, IoT platforms, cloud platforms, marketplaces. We're talking about proprietary enterprise clouds. We're talking about club goods data, like data ecosystem of different ecosystem partners who work together. And we're talking about open data sources. And the IDS connector allows to link all these data endpoints and to make it possible to share data according to the IDS way and using the idea of data sovereignty. So why have we been starting developing the IDS approach? And it started some 3 or 4 years ago from now, because a lot of companies see obstacles concerning the extensive sharing of data. They really want to share data, but there are a lot of obstacles. They don't want to reveal valuable data and business secrets to competitors in their business ecosystem, or for example, to their customers or to their to other partners. They fear, I mentioned that at the beginning, the loss of control over their data. They don't know what happens with their data, because today there's not a mechanism to bring back your data once you have shared it. And companies are not able to really process data in a perfect or suitable manner when they want to join the data economy, because they have inconsistent processes and systems, and they are looking for a very easy to use solution on being part of the data economy. And the fourth point to mention is that the companies have the insight, or at least the feeling, that today's platforms do not reach the critical mass, so that there are enough data endpoints to be connected, so that they really can bring their ideas for new business models to life. And there must be something else beyond vendor-specific or proprietary platforms. There must be something like a standard. And that's exactly what we want to achieve, and what we will provide. Now, the second chapter of today's webinar, the context of IDS. So, what parts of the world do we touch when we're talking about IDS, and how does IDS work, and how can we bring it to life? The first point, I want to give you an overview of who is really driving International Data Spaces Association. We have to make it, or to structure it, 3 parties that are driving the IDS approach. At the core of our activities, we have research institutions and research projects that deliver the technological core of our offering, that is the main part of our reference architecture model. And as you will see later on, we have a lot of research projects, national and international research projects, that help co-creating the technological core of the IDS offering. Then we have the not-for-profit organization, the IDSA. We are something like the standard developing organization. We have to care for the value proposition of international data spaces. We maintain the reference architecture model. We do the requirements management for further versions of the reference architecture model to come. We help to bring partners together to bring the idea to the whole world, and we do the knowledge transfer. And the companies you saw on the slide before, it is their job to bring the IDS approach to the market. So it is up to the companies to build and to provide a commercial software, and to set up services and interesting things based on IDS technology, like data markets, places, and other activities. For example, smart services in domain-specific implementations. So all these partners are working together in the International Data Spaces Association. A lot of them are in the webinar today, and together we can bring the IDS to life and really set up a global de facto market standard. Okay, I'm talking about the context of IDS, and I want to have a first technical focus with this slide. We don't invent the wheel twice. We use a lot of technologies and that are out there and that are known and used, and we just bring them together. And this is described in our reference architecture model, and especially in the section of the information model. That is, well, the core of our reference architecture, connecting all these good ideas which are out there concerning data economy and the Internet of Things. So when we're talking about the technological core of IDS, we have to talk about all these web services that are out there in order to connect data sources, for example, HTTPS, MQTT, REST, and everything around multi-part messages. Then at the core of our value proposition is to deliver trust for a business ecosystem and to build up trust between every two business ecosystem partners who want to exchange or link or share data. And therefore, we have to talk about digital identities and digital certificates, and that is a very important part of our offering. And we are using X509 digital certificates. And then mentioning the issue of certification, as an ultimate goal, we have to create the maximum level of trust between business ecosystem partners, and therefore we set up a certification scheme in order to certify on the one hand organizations that are taking part in a business ecosystem, and as well as the technological components, the connectors and other devices and components that are creating the network for the IDS. I come to that later on. Then, concerning linking of data, we adopt the concept of semantic data descriptions, and on that behalf, we're using the RDF, for example. Then, when it comes to the components, especially the connector, we have to talk about containerization, and for example, you can set up or implement the connectors using Docker. Okay, and that's the important things you should know about, prerequisites that you should know when you dive deeper into our reference architecture, and if you really want to set up your own IDS connector and business models or new ideas using IDS. Again, the context for IDS, I already mentioned that. We are strongly engaged in the research area. Our members from the research area are very important drivers of the technological core of the IDS offering, and you see them with their logos on the slide. And we have right now more than 10 major European research projects where IDS is the main part of the proposals and of the projects, and that help deliver more and more components or versions of our components that help to further develop our reference architecture and to integrate more and more ideas and technologies to our approach. Just to mention something like blockchain, for example, that will be part of our next reference architecture version. Well, we're not alone in the world, and we have a lot of very powerful friends that are driving very important developments in the IoT and in the data economy. As I'm not that familiar with handcrafting, I think the expression is nevertheless the right one. We interweave with other leading global initiatives to bring our architectures together and to make things happen and to really have a fast global proliferation of our approach. You see 5 logos on the left-hand side. One core partner when talking about the IoT is the Platform Industry 4.0 from Germany, which provides and take care of the RAMI model, the Reference Architecture Model Industry 4.0, and the Asset and Administration Shell as a core component of that concept can be compared with the IDS connector, and we bring these architectures together and we interweave it. It's nearly the same with the Industrial Internet Consortium, the IIC, which is being driven from the US, but which is the most important global initiative on IoT. And we are in a very close partnership with them, and we will bring in our ideas for data governance, data sovereignty, and a really secure internet gateway to the the Industrial Internet Reference Architecture. When it comes to collecting and gathering data from on the machine level and in a manufacturing context, then we have a liaison with the OPC Foundation from the very beginning, and we have system adapters that can speak OPC UA, and we have reference implementations that show how the IDS architecture can be used OPC UA compliant. As we are very strong engaged in the European ecosystem, and as we have some major projects in the field of big data, we are strongly connected or intensely connected with the Big Data Value Association, the PPP on European level, which take care of all big data issues. And just to make a note on that point of time right now, if you really want to do big data and artificial intelligence, you need as many data endpoints and data sources as possible. And IDS exactly provides the mechanism to reach these data endpoints and to make them available for big data and AI solutions. And all these activities should be linked very intensely together. The last initiative I want to talk about is the FIWARE Foundation. I think a very well-known initiative from Europe. They provide an open source IoT framework for really fast setting up IoT solutions, especially in the fields of smart cities, smart industry, smart agri-food, and smart health. And as they have a lot of stuff that can be used, it helps to speed up our implementation velocity, and we intensify the relationship to the FIWARE Foundation. We have a lot of liaisons with other initiatives, and we'll have further webinar episodes on that. As I mentioned at the beginning, we address all industries, and we provide a solution, and we set up a standard for the data economy for the sovereign use of sovereign exchange of data. That means that we want to and need to set up a standard that works for all domains. On the other hand side, we have to find and to enumerate all requirements from these respective communities or verticals. So our approach is that we set up in our association vertically, or rather domain-oriented communities that elicit requirements out of their business ecosystems in order to bring these requirements to more new versions of our reference architecture. The communities are interest groups from one domain with common challenges, and at the end they must validate the IDS approach and help proliferating our technology and setting the standard. And right now, as you see, we have communities on medical and health, on logistics, on manufacturing, and on farm and food, and others are in the very near future to come, like smart cities, energy, maritime, construction, industry, and others. Okay, so I hope I could give you a very fast overview of what IDS is doing and who are partners and friends, and what are the dimensions of our activities. So now I'd like to come to the real offering. What do we do? What can we bring to the table? My colleagues in the next webinars will have a deep dive on that. So I just outline it. I give you a short overview so that you know the expressions you have to know, and so that you can read it during the weekend in our reference architecture model. But I keep it very short. So what's new? What can we bring to the table? What is inside IDS? I started to outline that we want to make the data economy happen, and we want to unleash the value of the data. If we step back a little and see what data economy really means, we see that there are some steps to go before you can really act according to data economy, that you can really set up business models or business relationships with other partners that can be called data economy. So the first thing is you have to make your data available at all, and not only to set up a website, but you have to make sure that partners can dynamically and on demand access your data. So that means you have to describe your data and publish or expose the data somewhere, for example, in the internet. But then we are again at the problem that I mentioned in the beginning. Perhaps you are reluctant to expose your data to the internet because you see the value in it. So, and that's exactly the idea of international data spaces. So you can publish and expose your data in an IDS connector, and then you can be sure that your data is controlled by you and is only used in the way in the business ecosystem you want it to be used. Then you can link with ecosystem partners. That means you have to think about connecting, matching, and interpreting data. So we're talking about the semantics of data exchange, and later on we're talking about vocabularies and data formats. It is not our goal to make or provide the Esperanto for the Internet of Things, but with our semantic for the data exchange that is expressed in our information model, we provide a mechanism so that vocabularies from different domains can be connected and compared, and that two data endpoints can really understand each other. The interpreting and data formats, it's not our business, but we show the way how it can be done. If you want to know more on that, please have a look at our information model. So once you have exposed your data and linked with ecosystem partners, you can share data, and then you want to control the access to your data. So we have to talk about usage control. And if that has happened, if you have done these three steps, then you can really start creating value according to the idea of data economy. Then you can start to manipulate your data, to combine data, to bring apps on the table that can do something very interesting with your data. You can do some technical things like remote software execution, and you can start aggregating data. And these are the steps that you have to go. And if you ask yourself if your company is ready to do that, if you have all the mechanisms installed to provide data in this way, and data from your complete company, from all silos within your company, well, then you have the black belt in data economy. But the reality is that most of the companies are not at that stage. And IDS is a way to improve this and to make it more easy and better adoptable for companies to join data economy, especially for sure for SMEs, for example. Okay, concerning our principle, what is the ultimate value proposition of the IDS? What is really new? We provide a self-determined control of data flows, and there are three items that I would like to mention. The first is we have to set up unlimited interoperability. That means a standard for data flows between all kinds of data endpoints. I explained it before. The second and the main point of what we're doing is we have to deliver trust between business ecosystem partners that are acting in different security domains. It's always easy if you are in one security domain, if there's a focal partner in business ecosystem that sets the rules for exchanging data, for security, and so on. But data economy really makes fun when you connect or link data endpoints that are based in different security domains. And so we have to set up really comprehensive security functions that provide a maximum level of trust in order to make it possible to bring these data endpoints together. I think the fourth webinar episode from Gerd Brost from Fraunhofer will have a deep dive on that, and it's a very core component of our architecture. And then what's new is we want to deliver a framework for the governance for the data economy. That means very easy to use contracts that can be used between business ecosystem partners that are machine readable, where you can very easily define how to deal with your data, something like 50 usage constraint rules that help for 80% of all business scenarios. And then furthermore, with our complex technological infrastructure architecture, we make it possible to have usage control and enforcement of usage control for data flows. Okay, that should be enough for the moment. More in our webinars that go more in depth concerning these points. I would like to now, in the fourth chapter, would like to outline our offering. What can you really use, and how can we bring IDS to life? I would like to make some things clear on our offering and to give you a hint on how we want to bring IDS to life and to make it a market success and a standard. What we do is we standardize the semantics for data exchange protocols. That is a precondition for connecting these existing proprietary platforms I mentioned before on this green slide. I already and also mentioned that we are a not-for-profit organization, so we do not deliver or create a commercial product in the International Data Spaces Association. We deliver sample code that, well, explains or gives inspiration concerning the reference architecture model. But on the other hand, we really deliver sample code. It is provided on GitHub, for example. A lot is provided for our members, and you can use it. There are completely implemented reference use cases for different domains that can be used by companies at their own risk. But it is up to the companies to bring commercial solutions based on IDS technology or with IDS inside to the markets. So there will be commercial IDS implementations available in the very near future. First products are to be launched in this year, and they will be available by IDS certified vendors. So only if there's a sign on it, a logo on it, IDS inside, IDS certified, then you can be sure, okay, that is a component that is according to the reference architecture and that delivers the value I've presented before. Our core goal is to drive standards and to bring IDS as a solution for a very important issue in the data economy, or for a very important challenge in the data economy to the world. And that's why we are interweaving with so many international initiatives. And this only works, and it will only be very resilient if we exchange insights, ideas, thoughts, and concrete solutions. And that is why we founded the International Data Spaces Association as a club where you can exchange ideas on everything I have been talking about. Now, having a look at the market approach, when we're talking about international data spaces, we want to set up, or we have to set up an ecosystem that is open, vendor neutral, and trustworthy. Please have a look at the right, where the blue one can be seen. That is what the core goal. We want data owners and or providers and data users to exchange data and do something with it, to share, to monetize data. That's the core goal. That's fine as it is, and it can work. You can connect with some business ecosystem partner and share data, and everything's fine. It can and will probably be more fun if you add some services to this sharing of data in order to manipulate or do something with your data. So we will have service providers for broker services, for an app store, for provisioning of vocabularies, and so on, that can provide IDS certified services or solutions. And as I mentioned several times, we want to provide maximum trust, and that means we need we don't want to and have to create a large infrastructure, but we need some infrastructural components in order to make sure that we can deliver the maximum level of trust as we said to do. And that means we will provide something like the identity provider, certification authorities, certification body, then dynamic attribute provisioning service, and perhaps later on a security operations center, and perhaps some basic clearing and bidding functionalities. And as you see in the picture, the task of the International Data Spaces Association is to safeguard the value proposition, to set the rules for the data economy, and to deliver the trust by setting up the certification and identification processes, so that every participant of a data space can be sure that the data is handled just as it is described according to the governance. And it is up to companies, to you, to take over these roles and to bring IDS to life and to make it a standard. We help in approaching the market. This picture shows our approach of scaling of IDS components. So how do we bring new issues to the reference architecture, and how do we bring concrete implemented solutions to the market? We start with generic use cases where the request for a new feature is clearly formulated. We collect and evaluate these requirements and bring it to new versions of the reference architecture, and we bring it to the certification process, to the criteria catalogs of the certification, for example. We have the developers community who validate these concepts and who provide sample code in the form of a MVP and showcase how the IDS solution or component can work. And then it is up to the companies to scale these components in real-world company scenarios in order to achieve a wide market adoption. So when we're talking about the offering of the IDS, I just want to bring into your mind the idea, or the fundamental idea of the IDS. network. It is a trusted peer-to-peer network approach. I already mentioned that. We have software components that enable all stakeholders to participate in the IDS, and the quantity of all IDS connectors define a data space, and it's very similar to the internet. And there are internal IDS adapters which you can use to link data sources from your company to these connectors, and once they are in the connector, they are safeguarded via the IDS approach. If you have a look at the picture on the slide, it's part of our infographic that outlines the basic elements of the International Data Spaces approach. You can download the infographic from our website, and you see the main components they are described. We have the connectors, we have the identity provider, the clearinghouse, the broker, the vocabulary provider, and the app store, and that's mainly the general architecture and the roles of the IDS. I want to have a short deep dive on the core component, our gateway, the connector. We provide several versions of the connectors depending on the usage scenario you have in your company. When thinking about data economy, we can imagine completely different usage scenarios. There are very open usage scenarios where it is, well, completely sufficient to have a open source base free version of our connector, and you only want to use the information model, for example. Then the second version is the base connector. That's apparently the first commercial point to start with. It supports all IDS roles. It's fully interoperable with all protocols and data exchange mechanisms, but it has a reduced level of trust. Then we have the trusted connector as a very heavy, wide version that has or provides a high security level. And then if you have a usage scenario where you have the necessity to supervise your data ecosystem 24/7, we have the Managed Trust Plus connector that is bound to strong SLAs and has more comprehensive security features like a hardware anchor and so on and so on. So these are the defined 4 security profiles for our connectors. The connectors, when it comes to implementing connectors, they are different in their architecture concerning the usage scenario, and here are 4 examples of how this connector can be implemented using completely different devices. The trust on the top left, you see the trusted connector that runs on a sensor device and that delivers trust from the very beginning of the creation of data in a sensor. And the example is an implementation by SIG AG in the field of sensors. On the top right, you see Wally, which has a base connector inside that runs on a Raspberry Pi. It is connected with multiple sensors, and it's a typical example for the base connector, providing a lot of security features using the information model and supporting all roles of the IDS reference architecture. This is an implementation by the Nikos AG. On the bottom left, you see a lightweight sensor connector, a connector that only it runs on a 32-bit microprocessor. It's implemented by Fraunhofer and can be attached, for example, to pallets in a logistics scenario and used in thousands and thousands of items. And on the bottom right, you see the mobile connector. It runs on a mobile device. It is part of the logistics usage scenario from ThyssenKrupp, and it has been implemented by ThyssenKrupp AG, Fraunhofer, and Logenius GmbH. It's a logistics service provider that works together with ThyssenKrupp, and this mobile connector is implemented really on mobile devices. These are examples of implementing the connectors to concrete devices. Well, what is to come? Our development roadmap right now, we have delivered, first of all, we are focusing on interoperability. We have delivered a stable version of the IDS information model that will be part of our next reference architecture, and we defined the handshake between connectors, including the IDS communication protocol. Until the end of the year, we will focus on MVP2 and integrate trust level 1. That means we have the certification body and certification authority running. We can provide a dynamic attribute provisioning service, and we have the base certification up and running as an operating process. Next year, we have the MVP3. We're focusing on apps and vocabularies, the deployment of apps, interfaces, taxonomy, and how to bring vocabularies into the connector, and we will provide first vocabularies. And until the end of next year, we have the MVP4, Trust Level 2, where we will deliver the trusted connector. I already mentioned the Security Operations Center and the dynamic trust management, usage control functionalities, and the certification for trust. Well, you can read a lot more on concrete implementations, concrete usage scenarios when having a look at our use cases. We have a use case brochure. You can find it on the website. Please have a look at that. You will find 14 use cases described in it, and you will find very interesting usage scenarios like the data intelligence hub, a marketplace for services and data from telecom. You will find a very interesting supply chain solution from Setlock. You will find a scenario from the medical domain. You will see how Audi and Bosch bring their capacity and demand management systems together in order to have a collaborative supply chain risk management, or you see the technical implementation of the identity provider from Nikos AG, that is the core of our identity provision service. Okay, where do we head to in the future? And where are we today? We released the reference architecture model version 2 on Hannover Fair this year, and we will release the version 3 on the Hannover Fair next year. We're doing a lot on standardization. We founded a working group at the DIN, the German standardization authority that is linked to the ISO, where we specified the IDS connector as a secure internet gateway. That is still ongoing. First documents can be delivered by us, if you're interested. We have a strong focus on the internationalization with members all over the world. We connect with important initiatives. I already mentioned we work together with major European research and technology organizations on enhancing the technological core of the IDS offering, and we have by now an intense engagement in European research activities. Our ecosystem is potentially running. First products will be launched in fall of this year. First products are to come, and now we're starting the global adoption, and the webinar is one very important mean to do so. I don't want to go in detail concerning the high-level roadmap, and you can have a look at that later on. You see the sequence of our developments and everything I told before. Very important milestones are the base connector certification at the end of this year, so that you can be sure that a component or product you buy is really certified by us. And then next year, spring to the Hannover Fair, we will have a very elaborated version of our reference architecture model in the version 3 then, and we head towards the trusted connector then. Okay, just to come to the end of the webinar, there are a lot of documents you can read and gain more insights from. Well, our Bible is the IDS reference architecture model. Have a look at that if you want to gain a lot of technological details. Then we have our quarterly magazine, Data Spaces Now. Then you can keep track of what we're doing the whole year. And we have a very interesting study that we did together with our member PricewaterhouseCoopers on data exchange as a first step towards data economy. You see a lot of the foundations of what I told in there, elaborated very widely. I already mentioned the use case brochure, and if you are a software company, or if you want to set up a connector and build it on your own, and you want to bring it to the market as a commercial or not commercial product, then you have to face our certification activities, and you must see that you get your connector certified, and it is all written down in our white paper certification. So that was the end, or that is the end of my webinar episode. If you want to learn more, if you want to co-create international data spaces, if you want to set up an own community, if you want to play with our sample code, if you want to see and implement and use our reference use cases, please join our association, give me a call, contact the head office. It is very important. We have and very interesting. We have a social collaboration platform where you can meet all the companies and research institutions and initiatives I mentioned before. And it is really an agile community, and it's really fun creating the IDS. And I think the target in making the data economy really happen is a very important target. It's very, very motivating to work on that. I like what we're doing, and I hope that you join us. And thank you for listening to the webinar, and I hope the data stays with you. Thank you for participating.
Thank you very much, Lars, for the insights on the IDS, the architecture, the initiative, our association. I think it's a lot of things we have to talk about here, and we got a lot of information to share with you, like you can see. And I really would like to give you the chance to ask us some questions that may have occurred to you by now. Now would be the chance to come up with these questions and simply ask us and get Lars to answer these questions. Maybe to get that started, let me have the first question here. You talked a lot about the connectors, which are the gateway to the IDS ecosystem. The question that occurred to me in my very first time here is, why do you think that it is better to implement an IDS connector in order to interchange data or information than to have a simple common interface implemented? Why is it better to have a IDS connector and to connect to this ecosystem and not implement a normal interface?
Well, my answer would be twofold on that. The one hand side is a practical, economical reason. It is always better to use a standard when it comes to working in a network. So today, if you want to share data, you have to set up a bilateral contract and a bilateral interface with your partner in your ecosystem. And if you do it in the whole network, it's a lot of hassle to do so. And it's a very good idea to use a standard for that. And as we want to provide the semantic for data exchange, it is exactly what you would need. And then you can save some efforts in setting up connections in the ecosystem. The second part of the advantages of IDS is that you have completely new features that you can use in sharing data with your ecosystem. As I mentioned, we can provide a maximum level of trust. There is today no mechanism in the IoT world to really provide trust between partners in different security domains. And we provide a mechanism for governance for data when you share data, and you can use that, and that will be an advantage for you, so that you can really enforce usage control and usage constraints when someone else uses your data.
Okay, thank you. By the way, you can simply write us your questions in the chat of this GoToMeeting if you don't want to unmute here. Yeah, are there more questions left? If not so, I would like to say thank you for your attention and for your time. Oh, there comes a question in. Hello. Maybe not. It's only a hello here. Oh, there comes a question. Okay, Technical would like to know if there is a quick example to use.
Okay, you can do several things. The first is the body to join would be the developers community. We have a developers community where all the mentioned sample code is provided, and we have some things to use. For example, we have an echo service that you can use. We have some connectors up and running. We have the identity provider up and running. So if you want to use or set up your own connector, you can make use of that. If you don't know how to build the connector, we have right now 5 reference use cases that are completely documented and available as source code and as libraries and components and so on, that you can use. They are in our repositories, and it is described how you can set it up. It should be for a developer a very easy task to get them running. Then you could join the developers community, use the echo service, and start playing. And then if you are talking about business scenarios, you can join, for example, other working groups in our association.
Okay, thank you. Hope this answered your question. Are there more questions? Then there would now be the time to ask them. Okay. Doesn't look so. If there are questions occurring to you afterwards, don't hesitate to contact us via email, via phone. Get in contact with us, get into the discussion with us about IDS. And like I said, thank you for your attention, and have a great time, and see you in our next webinar on September 14th. Thank you very much, and goodbye.